Hey folks, as promised, we are back out in the shop and we have a giveaway coming up that we're doing in celebration of our 100th subscriber. So my thoughts were we should do something special for this landmark. I know it's not a big thing for most people, but I thought it was pretty cool. So I thought about making one of my custom knives for that giveaway. And we also got a birthday coming up in the family too, so I'll probably be making two knives, and the piece of metal that we're using will actually make two knives, so it just makes sense to make both of them at the same time. So we're going to get started on those. I'll show you what we're going to start with. What we got is a brand new steel or whatever you want to call it, lawn edger blade. It's called a heavy duty lawn edger blade. And it's got like a 1-inch hole in the middle. You can get them at your hardware store. But you can see I've already got kind of the profile drawn out on the knife or on the blade. And we're going to cut that out. And this is what it's kind of all about. Just get a piece of metal and draw on it until you like what you got. And then cut it out. So this is going to be another non-forged blade. This blade is already hard. It's tool steel. A good test to figure out whether your steel is tool steel. Do a spark test on it. Get you a sander or grinder and hit the edge of it. And if the sparks kind of feather out, it's a hardened piece of metal. If they don't feather and it just like regular sparks, it's soft steel or mild steel. So I'm going to get these cut out and we'll come back when it's cut out. So to cut this blade, I'm just using my 4.5-inch grinder here with a cut-off wheel. And you can cut a curve with it. You can see I did that there. The trick is to get the curve going as you're cutting. Kind of keep it going in a curve, and the cut will stay wide enough where you can make that curve. Sometimes it helps to save your smaller blades that are a little more used for the curved cuts, and because the blade's not as big a diameter, you can make those curved cuts a little easier. And I thought I'd show you what those feathered sparks look like, so let me show you real quick. Okay, you see on the end of those sparks how they kind of fork like the end of a snake's tongue? That's called feathering. And if you weren't grinding hard steel, it would just be like just a tiny round spark. It's not going to feather out on the end. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to cut the other side of this knife and make it two pieces, make it two knives. All right, we got these two blades separated. Pretty hot, pretty warm. Get it over on the table so it doesn't fall off. As always, I'm working one-handed. That one fell, no big deal. But yeah, that's starting to look like a knife now. So we'll just start trimming up these other little areas that we need to trim up. In here we'll trim the best we can. We'll go in as far as we can straight, and then we'll use the grinder to finish out that curve in any other place where that cutting wheel won't get. And I wanted to tell you, using these cutting wheels, as you're using it, you never want to be like this, looking down on the cutting wheel straight on, because these wheels will tend to fly apart on you, and these are going a few thousand RPMs. And if that thing flies off, it's going to take a gouge out of whatever it hits. You can look up cutting wheel accidents on the internet, and you will see just how horrific this stuff will of a wound it'll give you. So whenever you're cutting, you want to be over here. You don't want to be straight on with that blade looking down on it. Always be off to the side. So if it flies off, it may get in your arm or something like that, but at least you're not going to lose an eye or part of your face in the process. So we'll get these cleaned up and we'll show you what they look like once we get the outer profile of the blades done. Alright, there's our two blades. We've got them apart. We've got the profile done roughly. And after I cut off as much as I could with the cutting wheel, I came in with my grinding wheel on the edge and just kind of went over these areas and came in closer to the line. And then once I was done with all of that, anybody that's ever cut anything knows you'll get a burr on the outside, on the downward side of your cut. So I just took my flapper wheel and I put it on the edge and just went around a little bit just to knock that burr off. Anytime you're using the hand sander or grinder like this, avoid coming up here on top, because anything you do up here on top is going to show later when you do the finish on this knife when you start sanding it down. So only do on the edges out here, and don't even roll up on the edge very far. Make sure you stay on the side whenever you're doing this stuff. And like I said, this is real rough. We'll get it on the belt sander and we'll profile these edges, make sure we get the roundness that we want. It's kind of rough. You can see that it's probably not perfectly straight. And you're not going to get exactly what you draw out, but like Bob Ross used to say, that's a happy little accident. And you can probably tell both of these blades are not identical, and they shouldn't be. They're custom knives, but like this one here is a little narrower than that one. I had to grind a little bit of this shoulder off because it had kind of a hook on here. But you'll see they're not exactly perfect. And they don't have to be. So we're going to start working on getting the powder coating off of this. And anytime you're grinding on these or sanding on these, make sure you have some water around to keep it cool, especially out here on the point. Like do one side of it and then leave it alone, or dip it and then before you do the other side, because if you get this too hot out here on that point, you're going to lose your hardness. So just keep these things cool while you're cutting and grinding and sanding them on them. But these got a powder coating finish on them that we're going to sand off of here, and we'll start working on that. Oh, another thing I wanted to say about these cutting blades, you never want to do like grinding with this cutting blade. If you're going to grind, use a grinder. If you're grinding on these cutting blades, using this on the edge over here, this gets thin and there's more chances that that thing's going to fly apart. And also use a respirator anytime you're grinding or sanding with these things, because you never know what they're made of. They probably come from China. They could have asbestos in them or anything in here, and that stuff's going to be floating around in the air. You don't want to breathe it. Make sure you have a fan running too. So we'll be back. I forgot to tell you, this is the point where you want to put these knives in your hand and start feeling how it feels in your hand. Make sure everything's where it needs to be. Make sure it's comfortable. If it's not, change the profile. But this is the time to do it. If you want a little thumb notch up here, which we may end up doing, this is the time to do it. Feel it in your hand, feel what it feels like. Some people also like to have that little thumb notch to put their finger in if they're skinning or something like this. This is going to be kind of a, not a hunting knife, but kind of a dressing and kind of a skinner knife is what we're looking for. So now's the time to make the changes if you're going to make them. Alright, it's been a long process, but we've got most of the powder coating off. The blades almost had kind of a concave in them. So on one side we were polishing or sanding the outside and it was leaving the powder coating in the middle. So it's just a timely process. You just got to do your best and then be patient and take that stuff down. There's also kind of a rolled edge on one side where they stamp these blades out. It kind of rolls it over. So you got to keep sanding until that rolled edge disappears also, because otherwise you'll end up with a gap between your scales and the blade or the tang. So we've been at this just taking the powder coat off probably for about 2 hours using like a 50 grit sandpaper. So we're going to call it a day because we've already been out here quite a while and we have some other stuff to do. but I wanted to show you what that looked like at the end of our time. We've also got the holes drilled. And if you wonder how we drilled holes in the hardened steel, I will show you. So this is how you do it. We got a set of these drill bits for drilling hard steel. They're from Germany, but you don't have to buy them in Germany. I bought them at a farm show, and the company called Rodman Tools sells these. And this is a small set. They sell a big, full, complete set if you want to pay that kind of money. But I only needed the smaller bits for knife making. And they drill right through tool steel. Make sure you use lots of lubrication when you're doing it, and make sure you do it in a drill press. You don't want to be using a hand drill trying to drill that, because you're going to get all crooked and break your bits off. So use a drill press. This is the lubricant that I use. You can use any kind of like cutting oil will work. But once you see the hole dry out when you're drilling it, stop, put some more lubricant in it, and then drill again. And you'll be able to go right through that. You want to be on the highest speed that your drill press will go, so change your belts to where the highest speed. So this knife we're putting 3 small pins in, and this knife we're putting 2 large mosaic pins in. And you'll see what those are once we put everything together. But like I said, we're going to call it a day, and we'll come back out maybe tomorrow or the next day and get back going on these knives. Hey folks, welcome back. It's been a couple days, but we're back out in the shop. We're going to get back working on these knives. So let's show you what we're going to do today. So last time we were out here, we had sanded these down, pretty tedious task, with 50 grit on the belt sander. So today, when we got back started, we hit them with 80 grit. And then now we're going to go to 120 grit. That's as much as we're going to go with the power sanding. There's going to be a lot of hand sanding later. And if you think you want to start making knives, you better enjoy sanding, because there's a lot of sanding involved to get things where you need them to be. Lots of hand sanding. But we're going to switch out to 120 grit, and we'll show you what that looks like once we get that done. All right, there they are after the 120 grit. Looking pretty good. The edges are still a little rough because we haven't got the sander on the edges yet. It's taken quite a while with the belt sander to keep everything nice and flat and get down to where we're not showing a lot of the blemishes, like those rolled edges and stuff. But we're finally there. Now we're going to get our little belt sander out so we can dress up all these edges and get things rounded out. See this blade here, I want to take this point back a little bit further, like this one. And then I think this one here, I want to round this one a little further back, about like that maybe. But that's the time to do it. If you're face sanding your blades, I highly recommend you get one of these heavy duty magnets, super strong, and you just stick it onto your blade, and then you take it and you can face sand your blade without killing your fingers and heating up your fingers. It's a real handy tool. But we're going to get the little belt sander out and touch up the edges on those things. We got a little bit more time, so we'll try to get that done today. So we got the little belt sander out. And very important before you get going, you want to make sure this belt is square with the table. So we get out our little square, and we're a little tall out here on the outside. So we're going to take care of that. So just throw your little square up on there, make sure you got no daylight in there anywhere. And we are perfect. So we can start getting to sand these. Now, I've always found that if I need to use the top of this wheel, that this guard needs to come off. They always try to do a good thing by putting guards on everything and making them dummy proof, but it kind of hinders your ability to use it sometimes, especially with more advanced techniques like with the table saw and stuff. There's just no way you can limit this guard on because it's in the way. So we're going to use the top of this wheel sometimes, so that guard needs to be taken off. So like when we do like this little area up in here, we can come in like this and stand that. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to get a cloud of dust out of this thing. See what we're looking at. I'm trying to get that out. This one's getting warm, so I'm going to switch to the other one. You can see it's real imperfect right now, and that's what we're dressing up. That's pretty close. There's still a couple little areas on there that need to be touched up. I'm going to go get a cup, put some water in it so I can keep this cool. We'll be back. All right, we got our little cooling bucket here now. Some people would ask, why aren't you using gloves? And I use gloves so I can feel the temperature of the steel. And if I can't touch it, it's time to cool it down. You see I kind of pulled away on that one. But it's fine. We're going to keep doing this. And I'll show you a little bit of the process, but I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing. So. right, if you can see that, that shows every little dimple that you leave in there. So it takes a while to get it right. And if you see here, how this is a little crooked here, because I wasn't holding it exactly straight, we got to keep going until we get that right. But it's a tedious process. We'll come back. I don't want to bore you with the whole process. Those little divots that what we're trying to get out, and when we get done, it'll look like this back here. Starting to look better. All right, so you can see we got the edge all straightened out. Remember, we had that real rough profile before. Now we were able to smooth that out. We got a real nice profile to the edge. We're nice and smooth all the way around. You'll see if you got little start and stop points, so you got to feather those out when you're sanding. But it's looking good all the way around. This edge here is straightened up a little bit. You can see that transition. There's still just a little bit of an angle in there that we'll take care of. And then inside the finger notch, I can't get in there with the belt sander. So we're going to get the Dremel tool and we'll get in here and take care of this. Now when we do our finish sanding, you'll notice that all of the sanding marks are going up and down here, or side to side. When we do our finish sanding, we'll be sanding in this direction. So all those sanding marks will turn around and go the other direction once we do our finish sanding. But I'm going to get both knives to this stage here, and then we'll get the Dremel tool out for that. All right, we got both knives down to a good clean edge. So the next thing is the Dremel. If you have to take one side down any significant amount, you want to make sure that your holes are staying in the middle. So if you have to take quite a bit off of here, you'll need to take the corresponding amount off of the back side to keep those holes in the center. Or just wait and drill your holes later, but I like drilling the holes ahead of time. That way when I'm sanding, it takes all those burrs off. But you can see a few scratches on the surface here from moving it around on the sanding deck there, but those will all come out when we start doing our hand sanding. But we're going to get on the Dremel. All right, we got the Dremel done on both blades. Looking pretty good, nice and clean in there. And when we do the hand sanding, that's all going to be polished out real nice even further. But I think we're going to call it a day. We're not going to end the video. We'll continue the video on the next time we get out here. We got a storm front coming in, so it's getting crazy sticky out here. Humidity's gone way up. And it's supposed to be even hotter tomorrow. That's not going to help things. And we got some friends coming in from California to visit. They're on their way to Wisconsin for a wedding. So they're going to stop by and stay a few days with us on the way there and on the way back. So that's going to be nice. We haven't seen them in a while. But that'll keep us busy for a few days, and then we'll see what the weather does out here. We'll get back out here in the shop. We're going to take both of these blades and we're going to soak them down with WD-40 because we've had water on them when we were sanding. And this carbon steel, as clean as it is right now in this state, being nice and sanded, it will rust super fast. It'll rust overnight. So we're going to soak it down with WD-40 and wipe them down. So that'll protect them. So we'll be back. All right, we finally made it back out in the shop. Been crazy hot and humid. And we had some friends in from California, so we were spending time with them. But it's a little bit cooler this morning, plus I'm out early. So we got a winner for our knife giveaway. A fellow by the name of Kelly O'Neill won the knife giveaway. And I know this video doesn't match up with the timeline, but we started making the knife before the giveaway was ended and we picked the winner. So this is the one. We've been working on two of them. But now I'm going to go down to just working on one. We got the blanks made for both of them. We have the profiles made. But the other one is not needing to be ready till like August. So I'm going to concentrate on this one. This is the one we're giving away. And I told Kelly that we're not going to post this video until he receives the knife. So he'll be the first one to see it. But this is the one. We're going to put the big mosaic pins in these holes, and we're all done except for the bevel and some finish sanding, the scales, and the leather. So we should be able to knock that out fairly quickly as long as we can stay on it. I got my granddaughter coming out for a visit for 3 weeks, so we're going to be spending time with her too. But in between times when Kelly's home and can entertain her a little bit, I can work on this, and we'll get this out to you, Kelly. Have a little patience. These things take a while. So what we've done, we're getting ready to do the bevel. I've marked the front edge with a black Sharpie. So I'm going to take a drill bit that's the same diameter of the blade, and I'm going to scribe a line down that black edge that I made, and that's going to show me where my middle is. So we'll scribe it, turn it over, and then scribe it, and that'll show the middle. So as we start grinding our bevel, we can see where the metal is, because once we start grinding on one side, we're going to lose our reference from side to side. So that'll give us our center reference. So I'm going to do that, and we'll start our grinding, and we'll be back in a little bit. So we've got our center marked. I've got the bevel jig put on the sander. It's just a jig that I made that I clamp onto the table here. And it gets me up high on this top wheel. So as I grind, it kind of gives me a concave grind up here, kind of an inverted grind. So that'll stay sharp a little bit longer with that concave grind on it. But we're going to get to grinding. All right, we got the bevel ground. You can see it there. And it's down to a sharp edge, but we still had to refine the edge. That's kind of one of the finishing touches. But now we're going to do some hand sanding on the blade area to get it looking real nice, and then we'll tape the blade up to protect it, and we'll start working on the scales. I think I'm going to use some manzanita wood. It's going to go real nice with those mosaic pins that I got. The pins I have kind of a red highlight. I don't know if you can see that, but I think that'll match really well. Pins will be in there like that. It's gonna look real cool. So we're gonna do some hand sanding. It took a little while to get those bevels done because they got to be perfect. You want to look at the end of it here and make sure you're even on both sides, and then you take a look at it down from that way, make sure you're even on both sides. But we're there. We'll be back. Alright, we got some hand sanding done on the blade, looking real good. And now we're going to start working on the scales, but I think we're going to call it a day today. Been a while out here, and it's starting to get pretty warm. So we'll come back probably tomorrow and start working on these scales. I think this is the manzanita wood that we're going to use. I can get both sides off of this one piece. It's going to look pretty sharp. So stay tuned. We'll pick up the video again tomorrow. Alright, we're back. Started this morning at just when I could see out in the garden. And we finished up out in the garden because the sun come out, was starting to sweat, starting to get warm, so we come in the shop for a little bit. But if you remember yesterday, we got the hand sanding done on the blade, and then now we're going to start making the scales. So what we're going to do, we're going to find the best green pattern that we like on here. I kind of like to pick up some of the lighter colors. So we'll place the blade on here, and we'll trace around, do a rough trace, and we'll cut some rough pieces out and start drilling the holes, and we'll show you how that's done. So we got the scales traced out on here. I tried to pick up that white streak, went through there, and then there's a little detail down here on the end. You just try to get the most interesting grain that you can, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're going to go to the bandsaw. We're going to cut this proud of the line. Probably won't even cut this side here, but we'll leave a good space all the way around. And then we'll put this on the knife, and we'll drill through the holes on the knife and drill these holes out, and we'll pin them as we go. And then we'll flip it over, put the other scale on the other side, and do the same thing. And then once we get the holes in the right place, we'll put these two scales together, and we'll finish out this front edge so they match. And we'll finish sand it, we'll round it out, because this front edge you're not going to be able to dress up later when it's glued down to the knife, down to the tang on the knife. So the front edge of these scales, we're going to pretty much finish them like they're going to be finished. And then all we'll have to do is sand the scale down to match the tang of the knife, and then round it out and finish the rest of the scale. But I'll keep you updated as we go. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the processes. And if you want a more detailed knife making video, go back to the last one. We did that one in a lot more detail. So we'll see you in a bit. So we got these cut out. Got the marks on the other side. Those will be the outside of it, and then I marked it left and right so I can keep track of where it goes. But we've sanded the inside because you want that nice and flat, because that's what's going to go against the tang of that knife. So we've got them sanded flat, and the best way to do that is put a piece of sandpaper, and I use about an 80 grit, because I don't want it perfectly smooth, but I just want it flat. And I like to leave kind of a rougher surface on here, that way the epoxy bites a little bit better. So about 80 grit would do it. So that's what we did, and we sanded it flat. So I just laid a piece of sandpaper down on the top of my table saw, because it's got a nice flat surface, and you just work these until they're sanded all the way across. So there's no bumps anywhere on here. They're perfectly smooth. So now we're going to work on drilling the holes. We'll go to the drill press. We'll line these up, because you can see we left it wider than the outline of the knife. We'll line them up, get the one hole drilled, we'll put a pin in it, keep it lined up, put the other hole in and pin that. And then we'll do the same thing with this side, and then we'll pin these together and run the outline of these, make them the same all the way around. You can see they're not perfect, but we're still not going to take it all the way down to the line. We're just going to make them so they match. And then we'll work on polishing up this front edge, because we want this front edge to be pretty much finished. So we're going to get at that. So before you start drilling your scales, get your drill bits and drill some practice holes in some of the wood and fit your pin in there. You want it as snug as you can. So it took me 4 holes, and it ended up with 17/64 drill bit is nice and snug. It'll go in, but you got to kind of turn it a little bit, but it doesn't wobble, and that's what you want. So we're going to drill the holes in both of our scales, and we'll get this thing going. We got a first hole drilled. I keep a piece of wood underneath, and it prevents this drill bit from tearing out on the back. So we'll just move it so it creates a new hole next time. We're going to pop this pin in here. Okay, that pin will hold that hole where it needs to be, and then that'll allow us to drill the second hole out here. And it'll stay true. All right, we got our second hole in. I'm going to peel this scale off of here. And we'll get the other one, do the same thing to that. Remember, you got to turn the knife over, drilling this side. And even though this is a right-hand scale, we're drilling it on the top so we can see the pattern, so we can stay kind of close to the pattern. So let's drill the next hole. I'll line the blade up as best I can. It's got to be close. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, we got our hole through that side. We'll put our pin back in again. That'll hold that in place. Move our board. And drill your second hole. Alright. So now we can take our pins, or even the drill bit we use, and line these scales up. See how snug that fits in that wood. That's a good thing. Now, because all of these angles were 90 degrees, when we go to put this together, all these holes are going to line up. They'll be square with each other, because the drill bit, or the drill press, is 90 degrees to the drill table. So all of these holes will line up when we go to put it together. You won't be beating them together with a hammer. Because if you go beating these with a hammer, you're going to break a scale. And that's bad news. That's why you use hardwood scales too. You don't use any kind of softwood, and make sure the grain is going long ways with the tang. So we're going to put these two scales together and polish up that front end, and then we'll be ready to glue this thing up. Okay, we got the two handles pinned together, and because when we drilled the holes we put the blade right on those lines, we can sand down to this front line right here and make the two fronts of these match. You can see right now they don't match. So we're going to sand these down to the line just on this front. We're not going to sand over here and over here because that's going to come later. But, we're going to take this front down and make them even. Okay, what we're running into, you can see how they get really dark on the end. Because we use this sanding belt to sharpen the blade, it's knocked all the grit off of it. So I'm going to change this belt out real quick so we don't get this dark, burnt front on this. Okay, we got to re-square the table. That way, all of everything we sand is going to be square. We'll give that a shot. See how that's not burnt anymore? Okay, that's what we're looking for. You can see the end grain in there kind of matches, comes together in kind of a V. That's pretty cool. So now we're going to round these corners over here and do a real finished edge on the front. Okay, we got that front end pretty well evened up and rounded over. We're going to do some hand sanding. This belt was a 240, so we're going to hit this with 320, and that should be fine. Once we hand sand this and clean it up, we'll be ready to glue this baby together. All right, we're ready to glue up. I've got a little dish of denatured alcohol here, a whole bunch of Q-tips because I like using those for cleaning. I got my pliers to rotate my pins in if I need to. I got my pins beveled so they will kind of index themselves and they won't hit on the shoulder going through. So once they get through, we'll just push them through to where that beveled edge is all the way through. We don't have to worry about it. We got a couple clamps on the ready here. We got our 5-minute epoxy that we're going to mix up. Let me get the package open here. I've been using this Gorilla epoxy. I've been pretty happy with it. Not a lot of curing time. I think you got a little more than 5 minutes, but not much. So you got to make sure you get your dry fitting and everything done so everything kind of goes smoothly once you get this going. I may have already mentioned I got that knife, the tang on that knife already cleaned with the denatured alcohol. In the middle of this tube there's a little cap you got to punch out, otherwise that plunger won't go down. I learned that the hard way. And then once this is open, this cap goes on the end here. So we're looking for equal parts. So there's air bubbles inside. We want those air bubbles to go up so they don't interfere with the flow down here. And I do like to start these pins in one side of the wood. So they're already in one side. So when we go to put it together, it'll go together a little easier. So that's what we're looking for there. So let's get this epoxy mixed up. Got to break the little tip off of it here. That's why I wear gloves. So if it's not coming out equally, kind of move until it is. And then once it's coming out equally, you can kind of go to a spot. That should be enough. Put the cap on here and get moving. That was too much of the other stuff. So 2-part epoxy, you mix the 2 parts. You got a, it doesn't get hard until the 2 parts come together. So this side is what we're looking for. So now that's mixed together. We're going to put the epoxy on this side, everywhere that scale is going to hit. Good even layer. And then we'll push that through. Goes through nicely. And now we're going to put the epoxy on the other side. Got some epoxy on my work table already. Wasn't supposed to do that. So we're putting it on the pin, we're putting it everywhere on the blade. We got plenty of time, we don't have to rush this. Everything's going together well. So we got plenty of epoxy on there as well. I'm going to rip this glove off real quick so I can touch this other scale. So remember, we got those index holes, or those bevels indexed on there. So now we're going to take this, our screwdriver, and we're going to work that pin through past where that bevel was. Alright, that one's there. We'll do this one. Working it in there. Alright, we got those both all the way through. So now we're going to go with some clamps. But before I clamp it, I'm going to kind of put some painter's tape here on the outside so I can get those clamps back off. So we'll get some of our blue tape. We don't want to glue our clamps to our scales because there's a little epoxy on there. Okay, plenty of pressure on there. Let me get another little piece of painter's tape. I don't want to wrap it around the front because I still need to get up there and get some of this squeeze out taken care of, because we don't want that left up there. The squeeze out in the front is all we're worried about. The squeeze out around the sides, that'll all come off when we're sanding. So I'm going to put this clamp here up front. Try to get it centered. Some of this probably hasn't been caught on camera, I apologize. Alright, we got our clamps on, we got plenty of pressure. So now we're going to take one of our Q-tips, dip it in our denatured alcohol, and we're going to take out any squeeze out that went up here in the front. And the denatured alcohol kind of acts as a solvent to the epoxy. So any of that squeezes out and gets on the blade, we want to get rid of. And we also want to get as much as we can off the front of that wood. Basically anything sticking out. Grab another toothpick. I keep changing them as I go because keeping it clean. And then we'll get the dry side in there and wipe. Get another one. Clean what we can. Then we'll get the dry side in there and wipe it off. I think we want to do that one more time. It'll definitely show up if you don't do that. So get it wet And then take the dry side of the Q-tip, clean that off. One more on the other side. Get it wet, clean it off. And then the dry side. Okay, we are glued up. So now this is going to sit for 24 hours. So we're going to see you tomorrow on this. And once this is dried up, set up, we can start whittling that wood down, making it even with that scale on the back. I'm going to keep an eye on this for a little bit, of course. We'll see you tomorrow. Well, it's not tomorrow yet. I've been working on this dresser over here for Kelly. She wanted me to get this done, so I've been messing with this. But you only have to have those clamps on the when you epoxy the blade for 30 minutes in the instructions. But it says cure time 24 hours for any weight bearing or load bearing. So when I took the clamps off, I just cut the pins to where they weren't sticking out, sanded them down flat on both sides, and then I sanded the profile all the way around to make it match. And then now we'll do the rest of that tomorrow. I just wanted to show you what we did with that. See you tomorrow, for reals this time. Well, it's been a couple days, but we're back. This is where we're at. You saw this on the last video. So what we're going to do today is we're going to profile these scales. We still have to sand it down to meet the tang on the ends all the way around. So we're going to do that first. We'll lay it flat on the belt sander, and we'll go around until we hit the tang. And if you remember, we've already kind of finished the front. So once we go down and hit the tang, then we'll start rounding over all these edges and getting the profile that we want. And then it's a lot of hand sanding. Now with these mosaic pins, if you ever use those, you don't want to get those too hot. Because if you get them too hot, you'll kind of melt that epoxy out of them and they won't look as nice. So you want to go real slow when you're sanding these mosaic pins. Make sure you touch them. If it's getting too hot, just stop, slow down. So that's what we're going to do now. I emailed Kelly last night and told him where we were at on this. I'm actually flying out to California tomorrow to pick up my granddaughter for a visit. And I'm driving out to Denver tonight to go to the airport. So we're going to get this thing done before I leave. And then when I get back, we'll do the leather work on this thing. And then it'll be ready to send out. I tell you what, I'm not going to schedule a project anymore for spring. Boy, I tell you, so busy around here with the garden and everything. I just got that dresser done for Kelly this morning. So we'll get her done though, Kelly. And she's coming to you. Alright, we got the profile all the way down to the tang, all the way around. You can see how that's sanded flush with the tang. That's what we're looking for. And I think our thickness is pretty good. We're not too blocky. And when we start rounding over these corners, it'll feel even better in the hand. It feels really good right now. Too bad I'm giving this away because I really like it. But when you start rounding these edges right here, you want to use the unsupported area of your belt sander. You don't want to use this one that's got the backing plate down here, because this is a little more forgiving. It'll move with you when you're sanding those corners. And I got a 120 grit on here. I had to change part way through because when we got to the end grain down here, we were doing those burn marks again. So I put a brand new 120 grit belt on there, and that took care of it for the most part. So you got to be real careful when you're rounding these corners off. Make sure you stay even all the way around and just go slow. Don't get too greedy. You're going to do the bulk of it with the hand sanding, cleaning everything up. You're just wanting to knock the corners off right now is all you're doing. So we're going to get that done, and we'll show you what it looks like after we're done, right before we do the hand sanding. So a good way to start beveling your scales is just hold your knife at kind of a 45-degree angle and do like a 45-degree angle all the way around. And then that gets you a real good start. You want to watch the gaps between the end of your sanding area and your tang and try to keep them kind of even. Watch those gaps there and just go all the way around the knife. Another little trick I like to do, because if you're like me, you detest wearing a respirator all the time. And I'm not looking forward to all the airport stuff tomorrow because it's masking all along on the plane and masking all the way in the airport. I'm going to be wearing a mask all damn day tomorrow. I ain't going to like that. I like my freedom, but a good way to do it in your shop if you don't like wearing a respirator, I got a big fan over there, and the fan blows this way. It blows across my belt sander. So I've always got fresh air in front of my face right here, and the dust isn't coming up and accumulating in my face. So that's a good way to do it, and the air just blows, circles around the shop, and goes out the other door over there. So nice little trick. So now we've got these 45-degree bevels. I'm going to start rounding on the sander. We'll get it up here and we'll do some turning, making sure not to go too far into the face. I'm just going to do a little rounding action like that real lightly, because this will get away from you fast and you don't want all your work to be for nothing. So take it slow, go easy with it, and then it's all about hand sanding. So I'm going to do that right now and we'll come back when we're done. All right, we got that portion done on the belt sander. You can see there's still some little lines in there and stuff like that, but those are going to come out with our hand sanding. But we've got it profiled as far as we dare go with that belt sander. And it feels really good in the hand. We're going to round these out real good with the hand sanding. Didn't want to get too crazy on the belt sander, but we're close enough. Looking real good, feels real good in the hand. Really nice. So I'll show you how we do the hand sanding. So I got a piece of leather that I used to put in the vise to protect the knife blade. And I'll put it in here. Tightened it up pretty good. Now, just like when you're doing the blade, you need to graduate up on your sandpaper grit. I have some 120, some 220, and some 320. So we're going to start with the 120 to get these lines in here. Actually, this is 180, but same difference. So I just fold these up. Makes it a little bit stiffer because you got more layers of sandpaper. Kind of easier to work in your hands. So I fold it in half, and then half, and then in half. So basically we're in quarters. See, it's not perfect, but gives you a nice little sanding pad. And then you just come in here and start working on those flat lines that you've left. You can see we've already almost knocked that one out. Doesn't take long, really. You just have to go around it and make sure that you're getting all those areas rounded over. And you're also going to see that this tang right here, all the sanding marks are going this way. Now it's going to end up going this way. And the whole knife's going to be that way all the way around. The grain of the sanding is going to be this way. When we did the Dremel, it's already that way. So once we get up here and meet that, it'll be the same. So I'm going to do a bunch of this. I'm not going to bore you with sitting here watching it. But as we get further along in the process, we'll come back. As you're sanding around the front of this and making this front kind of rounded over, you want to be mindful, be very careful not to get into that blade. That's the reason why we finished that front area ahead of time. So take your time and just get in there real gingerly and catch that little corner. It can be done, but you'll figure out real quick why we finished that front edge beforehand, because you don't want to get up here and start scratching this blade. Scratches are very hard to get out, especially when you don't have room to sand up there. So, but as you get out here more, you can get a little more aggressive out here on the outside. We've already almost got all of that grain and that tang all turned around, looking pretty good. So we're going to keep after it. As you start working your way around the end, just undo the vise, move the knife up so you can take a good look at the end here, and just keep rotating around. Eventually we'll flip the knife over and start working on the back over here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about finish. We flipped the knife over. We're doing the back side of the heel now. We flipped our sandpaper over because we're running out of grit in there. Get some fresh grit going. But I want to talk to you a little bit about finish. If you take a knife down to just a pristine mirror finish, it no longer looks handmade. And you can take your time and do that. I'm not saying you can't. If that's your goal and that's your taste, definitely do that. But I don't take my blades down to a mirror finish. I'll go to probably a 400 to 600 grit sandpaper on those, because I don't want a mirror finish. Because to me, a mirror finish looks like a stamped out carbon copy blade made by a machine. So I like to keep it, I don't want to say rustic, because I don't want it to be crazy, look like it's unskilled labor making the thing. But I don't like to take all the detail out of everything, because like I said, then it no longer looks handmade. But we're going to make it look nice, very nice. But just keep that in mind when you're finishing something. Don't make it look like it's a carbon copy, stamped out, machine-made knife. Because these handmade knives, they're one of a kind in the world. There's no other like this knife in the world. There may be something that looks similar, but this is a one-off, one-of-a-kind knife. And that's why handmade knives are so special. When you're sanding, trying to get rid of these lines from your belt sander, as you hit your surface here, put your fingers out wide like that, and that'll allow your sandpaper to kind of curve, and it'll help round it over and get rid of those lines. So the sandpaper kind of curves around and gives you a lot smoother surface because it's rounding over the top evenly, and all those little lines will disappear. Alright, I almost have the 180 grit complete. You can see it's looking pretty good, coming together. And the other grits will go a lot faster. The other grits are just to smooth it out. This is really a shaping process we're going through right now. So the 220 and the 320 will be a lot quicker. But I retaped my blade to expose the back of the blade, because I need to change the direction on those sanding marks. You can see there's still a little bit right there, so I don't know if you can see it perfectly. But we're going to work on the top of that blade right now. We'll clamp that in the vise, and that'll allow us to do that. Make sure everything's down below. Okay, so that's going to allow us to do that. The rest of the blade has already been, the direction has been changed. I got a little bit more right here on the back, but the curved area is already in line. So this is it right here. And then we'll switch over to the other grit of paper and start polishing this thing up a little bit. I was sticking up a little bit right there, which is going to cause me a problem. So move that down. Hi, Brandy. What have you been doing? You look like you're all wore out. Hey, what have you been doing? See, my shop's a damn mess after that cabinet project for Kelly. Hi, Kel. Hey. So, we're flying out to Denver tonight, so I'm trying to get a bunch of this stuff done. So I'll get this done and we'll see you back in a bit. Okay, we're down to our 320. And once I get to the 320, I like to just hold it in my hand. That way I can move it around a little bit. So we're doing the metal and the wood. Just rolling it around. Polishing everything up real nice. Some work out here on the end. Coming together real nicely. I like it. So we've been at this hand sanding, I would say, for about an hour and a half. You got to have a little patience, that's for sure. If you don't have the patience, this is not a hobby to get into. And a lot of people take my previous comment about not making a pristine knife as kind of a cop-out, saying I don't want to put in the work to get everything pristine. Well, feel that way if you like, but that's a true statement. I don't think they look like handmade knives anymore once you've got like a mirror finish on it. You just look at things as you go. Roll a knife around in your hand. I really love how we picked up that light streak in there. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll show a better look at it later. So we've got the handle pretty much done, and I've taken the time to expose these areas here, like in the finger notch, because we want to make sure when we go to the fine sandpaper that we're doing those as well. Because remember, they still have the lower grit from when we rounded it over, and then we did this with the Dremel. We want to make sure we polish up those areas too. Now I'm going to do the back of the knife. And I roll over the edge just a little bit because you don't want a sharp edge on the edge of that knife. And then we're also going to do this little area up in here. Make sure we get some polishing done up there. Roll over the edge just a hair. And I think we're there, folks. Let's peel this tape off of here. It's going to be a little dusty, but get the first look at an almost finished knife. Some dust up in those areas, but we'll clean this off. We've managed to not scratch the blade surface, which is nice. There is some tape residue. We'll get some alcohol, clean that off. But that's what she looks like, folks. You can see the back of the blade is shined up. See the mosaic pins in there? But we'll give you a better shot of it later. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get some finish. Looks like I got just a little detail up here on the front of the scale to take care of. But after we do that, we're going to put some finish on these scales. A lot of people do an oil finish. I don't do an oil finish. I do like a Varathane or something like that, because the oil tends to dry out sometimes and you'll get the finish will start to dull. But we're going to put a real good Varathane finish on here. So let me polish this up and we'll go do that. Alright, we masked off the blade again, and then we went and put our finish on the handle. Beautiful. That grain of that manzanita wood's really come out nice. You see we got that nice white stripe in there. Really cool. So Kelly, your knife is basically done, other than letting this cure. And we'll do a final, refine that edge just a little bit. We'll do a final sharpening. And then when I get back from California, we'll do the leather for this knife. And we'll get it shipped out to you. We hope you enjoy it. But I sure like it. Might make me one like it. Of course, like I said, I never keep these darn things, darn it. Need to make one and keep it. Alright, I'm not going to show you the leather video because I've already made a leather video. So if you want to see the sheath being made, go back. There is a video on that for the previous knife. But this will be the closeout video for this knife. So, well, maybe I'll do one after this is cured. I'll take the tape off and we'll put it down on the table. We'll do a nice shot of it for the end shot. So, until next time, stay safe and stay healthy. Come on back and see us at Mark Kelly Farms, and we'll do some more of these fun projects. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. We love you guys. Bye. Alright, we got it all done. Got it all shined up, polished up. We got the leather made. We'll show you what it looks like in the leather. It turned out fairly nice. I like it. Want to keep it. Like I said, I end up giving all my knives away. It's coming out real nice. We're going to send it out to Kelly today. So stand by, we'll put it in a sheath and we'll show you what it looks like with that. Alright, there she is. Nice little hunting knife, or little dressing or skinner knife. Pins look real cool. Got that manzanita wood, that white streak through it. So we're going to ship it out. It was a fun project. We'll finish up the other knife here in the next few days or so, or the next week. It takes a while. So much going on in springtime. So till next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you back here on Mark Kelly Farm.